There's been all kinds of talk today about Montreal Canadiens trade rumors. Could they be going after a top defenseman like Alec Martinez or Shayne Gostisbehere? Could they still be interested in Taylor Hall? We'll take a look at all the latest rumors coming up next. So welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of Montreal Canadiens trade rumors I want to discuss here today. There's been all kinds of talk online about the Montreal Canadiens, what they might be looking to do. Obviously, the team is working its way out of a big-time slump. They were winless in 8 games. Of course, they come up with a big victory against the New York Islanders the other night, which was a big game against a lot of their former captains. It was a nice evening. It's certainly a little bit easier, I think, for their team to kind of get up for a big-time performance, but they certainly came through and came up with a big victory there against the really strong New York Islanders franchise. Now, as we've discussed here over the last several days, there's been a lot of talk about Montreal and Marc Bergevin possibly making some big time moves for his hockey club, trying to bolster them up into being a more serious playoff contender. Earlier in the season, it was looking pretty solid that they not only would be a playoff contender, but they very well might have a really good shot at finishing in the top 3, and maybe even getting home ice during the first round of the playoffs. But obviously, an 8-game losing skid is certainly going to derail that and push you down the standings and change your season here quite substantially. Now there's been all kinds of talk about what Bergevin is going to do or needs to do to kind of give themselves a boost and get them going here in the right direction. Now, of course, as we've talked a lot in the last several days, Taylor Hall has been a huge topic of discussion on where he's going to end up. NHL insiders like Elliotte Friedman and Darren Dreger have both indicated before that they feel that the Habs would be interested in possibly looking at a Taylor Hall acquisition, and that they might even be interested in re-signing him, and the Hall might be willing to play in a Canadian market, even though some Canadian markets can be tough to play in, lots of pressure, all kinds of media scrutiny, but he's used to that from playing in Edmonton before, and he's certainly up to the challenge as well. So I guess we will see, but would the Montreal Canadiens want to make a big acquisition for the forward position? That was the big talk not that long ago, but now lately it's shifted to their back end on the blue line because they've been having a lot of issues with defense and even goaltending as Carey Price has struggled as well. Now, of course, on the blue line outside of Shea Weber, they really haven't had a lot of strong play back there. Certainly other players like Victor Mente certainly had his ups and downs this year, but now he's injured out for a couple of weeks, and there's been a lot of talk, and the hot rumor this morning was Shayne Gostisbehere possibly heading to Montreal, that the talks had intensified between the Montreal Canadiens and the Philadelphia Flyers. That came from Martin McGuire from Montreal Radio. There's some stuff on Twitter. I think even Georges Larac even had tweeted about it as well, indicating that McGuire had indicated that the sources were saying that there was intensified talks and that they might be pulling the trigger very soon, leading us to think that maybe, if this is true, that we could see a trade announced as early as even today or sometime over the weekend. It's certainly a distinct possibility, but now we've had other NHL insiders like Elliotte Friedman say he's checked into the rumor and they were denied, but of course it just depends on who you talk to. Now, Eric Engels, who also covers the Habs for Sportsnet, also has looked into it and weighed in here, and those talks, according to him, were not true either. I mean, they could be having talks, maybe, but it may not be as serious or as intensified as we were led to believe earlier today. You know, that seemed to be the hot topic around the Habs through social media as this morning got underway here. But obviously, Shayne Gostisbehere, I think, as I mentioned before, I think would be a great fit in Montreal. He's that left shot defenseman who could play the top pair minutes with Shea Weber. He's certainly had his ups and downs over the last year or so, but he's shown in the past that he can be a very effective, mostly offensive defenseman. He's not too bad defensively, but his biggest strengths are certainly, being a puck mover who can get the puck up the ice, play in the power play, and really help on the offensive side of the game. And like I said, he could be that partner for Weber that they've been looking for now for quite some time to build some consistency and somebody who can be a legitimate top pair defenseman on that left side. The right side's a little bit stronger with Shea Weber and Jeff Petrie in the top 2 slots. So it's certainly the left D that needs to be upgraded in Montreal. Now, of course, there was also some talk from Elliotte Friedman that even though he said his sources denied the Shayne Gostisbehere intensified talks, that Montreal had been taking a look at Alec Martinez. Now, that came from his latest 31 Thoughts blog, which came out late yesterday as well. There was some talk in there that Montreal was taking a long look at Martinez, but unfortunately he did get injured. So obviously if they were having any talks or they were serious about making an acquisition, then obviously that would have been put on hold until he comes back. So I guess we'll see when Martinez returns from injured reserve for the Los Angeles Kings, if Montreal seems to be scouting him or not. Now, Martinez is listed as a right defenseman, but he is a left shot, so he could possibly play a similar type of role, but he's not nearly as offensive as Shayne Gostisbehere. He's a very different kind of defenseman. In my opinion, I don't know if he'd really be suited for top pair minutes at this stage of his career. He's 32 years old. He's got 2 more years, like this one and 1 more on his contract at $4 million. He does have a lot of experience. He's obviously got some Stanley Cup pedigree to his name from his time in LA, so he'd have a couple of Stanley Cup rings. He knows what it's like to go through those long playoff battles and win, so that experience would be very beneficial. But at the same time, as far as his play on the ice goes, I mean, he'd be okay in the right situation, but I think Montreal needs somebody a little bit more. They've already got, a good mixture back there of veterans with some younger players. I think Gostisbehere is kind of like right in the middle. He's not, super young, but he's certainly not an aging veteran either. He's not well into his 30s. He's still only in his mid-20s. He's got 4 years on his deal at $4.5 million. So both of these contracts are certainly, somewhat reasonable for sure. But I think if either of these rumors were to come true, personally, I think the Montreal Canadiens would be much better suited to tackle a Shayne Gostisbehere trade. Now, the only big question is in either of these scenarios is what is the asking price going to be? Now, in the case of Alec Martinez, I think it would be a lesser price. He's not putting up the offensive numbers. He's got a little bit more, less favorable contract, I guess we'll say, whereas Gostisbehere's look to be, at least when he's playing at his potential, 50, 60 points, is a very team-friendly contract, and he's a little bit younger. So the asking price, I think, from Philly would be more. But Montreal, as we know, is loaded up with picks. As I mentioned before, they have 8 picks in the first 4 rounds of the 2020 draft. They've got all kinds of younger players or top prospects that are either just starting to play in the NHL or that are about to be playing. And, they got some pretty good guys on the blue line, including Mete and Fleury, as I've mentioned, are actively playing with the club right now. They've also got Josh Brook, Noah Juleson, and they've got Romanov over in Russia, who Marc Bergevin was just recently over to see. Hopefully he has a better indication if Romanov will be coming over next year, but that's going to be a question mark for when his season ends in the KHL over there. Of course, up front, you've got some youngsters like Suzuki and Kotkaniemi that are already on the roster. Kotkaniemi certainly had his share of sophomore struggles this year, so we'll see how he goes. But, I mean, he's another player. I wouldn't think the Habs would want to trade him, but he could be somebody that other teams that you're talking to about trades would inquire on. Suzuki certainly looked pretty good so far as well, could show some interest, and they've got other guys like Ryan Poehling, not to mention Cole Caulfield, who would probably be the most intriguing prospect out of most of them, I would think, with the goal scoring that he's done in the United States National Team Development Program last year, and he's having a really solid year in first-year college hockey too. So I think Caulfield's probably one of the more interesting prospects for sure, but certainly lots of young, interesting players that Montreal could dangle for help right now. Obviously, with guys like Carey Price and Shea Weber not getting any younger, they want to try to win sooner than later, and they could use some of those prospects to dangle for one of those top guys. Now, of course, like I said, there's always a Taylor Hall talk as well. Now, with New Jersey, there's also been talk, according to the 31 Thoughts blog by Elliot Friedman, that Taylor Hall is not the only player that they were considered trading right now, and they also would consider parting with forward Miles Wood, who's under contract for this year and one more, a little over $2 million. Of course, Miles Wood took a long time to come to an agreement during the past offseason on a new deal with the Devils, but he's certainly not quite playing up to expectations so far. Not really playing as physical and as gritty as he has in the past. Not sure if the fact that they've been losing so much and having a bad year in New Jersey's maybe taking away his passion or his energy a little bit. That certainly could be the case. From an offensive standpoint, though, he's put up 7 points in 27 games, and is another player, according to Friedman, that Ray Shero would consider moving. So maybe, Hall and Wood could possibly end up in a package deal. I mean, I wouldn't rule out the possibility about defenseman Sammy Vatanen as well. He's at that right age. If they're going to have to continue a rebuild here, that based on his contract and his age and everything, that he could be an asset that draws a good haul back in return as well for New Jersey. It's not really clear exactly the direction here that Ray Shero is going to take. And of course, you can't help but take a look at PK Subban as well. The fact that he struggled so mightily in New Jersey. He's gone a lot of games now and consecutively without putting up any points. He's not the same player that he used to be for some reason. He just can't seem to get the offensive thing going. But of course, it's not just him that goes on the team. But even in his younger days in Montreal, he could certainly go end to end, put some highlight reel goals up, and certainly be a one-man show when needed. So he just certainly doesn't seem to have that capability any any longer. So certainly interesting to see how Ray Shero is going to play things out, and if Montreal is going to be a suitor for Taylor Hall. We mentioned lots of other teams as well that are still in the mix. Been lots of talk here the past few days. Colorado, St. Louis. Even teams like Arizona has been mentioned by Elliot Friedman. I'm not really sure I see the Arizona Coyotes going after a huge deal like Taylor Hall. They're tight up against the cap. I'm not really sure exactly what it would take from Arizona, but according to Friedman, that's something he wouldn't be surprised. He's even mentioned Dallas too. They've seemed to get things back on track or in a wild card spot as of today. So we will see what happens. I don't think there's going to be any short of suitors, but it's likely going to be, based on NHL insider information, Taylor Hall likely be traded sooner than later. And if I'm the Montreal Canadiens, I'm going to try to shore up my blue line in a goaltending situation as soon as possible as well. They are giving youngster Caden Primo his first start tonight against the Colorado Avalanche. I'll be very curious to see how he does there. Hopefully the defense can play a little bit better in front of him. That high-powered offense in Colorado is certainly going to be a major challenge for the young goalie, and hopefully he's up to the task and can get his career off to a pretty good start as he'll make his NHL debut against the Avalanche. So let me know, especially if you're a Habs fan, of all these rumors floating around between Gostisbehere and Martinez and Taylor Hall. What should they do? Give me your mock trades. What are the areas do you think are most concerning that they need to address immediately? And what kind of package would you put together if you're Marc Bergevin to make the acquisition? Give me your thoughts down in the comments and we'll continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.